what Bitcoin can provide is the ability to truly own an asset and control it, and with no counterparty risk. So when you take Bitcoin, whether you buy it peer-to-peer or off an exchange, and you take custody of that, whether it's in a setup where you've got your hardware signing devices or whatever, you control that. There's no counterparty risk. There's no one you have to ask permission for to spend that Bitcoin. I can send you a transaction, Jake, without asking for permission from my bank to send you some Bitcoin. And you can likewise do the same. We don't have to ask permission from everyone. So that inherently just gives you the freedom to choose how you're going to transact, who you're going to transact with, and to what extent you're going to do that. And I think that gives people freedom. And there's probably no better expression of freedom than your ability to decide where you're going to deploy, whether it's that capital you've saved or the money you've worked for. And I think that goes hand in hand with Bitcoin. You make those decisions. And as we've talked about through this episode, decisions, cut off all alternatives. And when you deploy your savings into Bitcoin, you have the ability to then decide how you're going to spend it without asking for permission.
Permission is a great word. I talked through this with Dale quite closely. You have to be very careful how you adopt Bitcoin, because there's lots of different variations of Bitcoin. To start at the beginning, you might send your dollars to a crypto exchange and you buy Bitcoin and you just sit on the exchange. Mm-hmm. Well, really what you have is a derivative for Bitcoin. And that exchange might be correct. It might be trading all these different altcoins, who knows? Then you can move it to self-custody, but there's then single-sig versus multi-sig versus a mobile wallet. And this is obviously where Bitcoin Mentor really comes in. So if you want to have a kind of permissionless setup, do you have a specific setup that you'd like to recommend? Or like, how should people think about that? Because not to badmouth anyone, but there are plenty of services out there that are very smart with their marketing that will imply that you're not responsible enough to look after your own Bitcoin, and therefore you need me. And I'm not happy about those. I think that's probably a safe way of saying it.
I don't disparage any other solutions, and nor do you. I know that. And I just kind of think that it is a paradigm shift for people to actually feel as though taking responsibility is a good thing. And most people abdicate that responsibility all through their lives to other counterparties, and having that ability to have a setup that you control, whether or not you feel that you can, we can help you get comfortable with whatever solution we work on with you. So no, I mean, I don't think there's a one best solution other than one that the individual feels comfortable replicating and, understanding what it means, why they're doing it, and how they can make it work. So, we have sort of best practices that we follow given different circumstances. And that doesn't mean that my setup is the right one for you or yours is right for, one of your friends. But through that process of Socratic dialogue, maybe we can figure out what is the right one for you or, my uncle or whatever the case may be. And we figure out where their strengths and weaknesses are and comfort levels and all that kind of stuff, and get them through that, Bitcoin continuum, if you will, to sort of start them at point A. And maybe 2 years later, they're at a point where they've totally got comfort and confidence, and they feel liberated with what they've got, and they're not relying on anyone else. So I think it's just wherever the person's at that they kind of feel good about, that's kind of what we want to help them with.
Yeah, awesome. It's essentially a massive spectrum.
Yeah,
and
it is.
There's no solution that's perfect for anyone.
Yeah,
everything is a trade-off, and it's wherever you feel most comfortable that's the best one.
Yeah,
and I always really resonated with the idea that you guys spoke through, was like just meeting people where they're at.
Yeah,
because everyone's at a different stage. But the chances are someone at Bitcoin Mentor is well ahead of where you are, and therefore can be extremely helpful in shortcutting your route there.
Yeah, I want to touch on one thing that you said that I think all of us in the Bitcoin space can relate to, is that it can be boring. Like, you basically are allocating capital to Bitcoin and then just keeping it there for the long term.
And then just shut up.
But so what I find is interesting and important in the Bitcoin journey is you're starting at this point, but as your knowledge and confidence and commitment to Bitcoin increases, so too does your understanding, so too does your competence with your setup. So I think that's where the interesting part comes in. You start at point A with a mobile wallet, and at the end of the day, you've got 2 years later, you've got a setup with one of the new solutions that has miniscript involved with decaying multi-sig and built-in inheritance planning, and you've done that yourself. And I think that's kind of the exciting part of Bitcoin, without trading it, with just holding it and making sure that what your setup is perfect for you at the time.
It's like basically the Bitcoin rabbit hole is never ending,
Yeah.
and just keep on digging, because
Mhm.
it's such a compelling intellectual process, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be trading in and out of an asset to
No.
get those kind
Yeah.
of bits of feedback.
But if you
Well,
can, go
Mike,
for it. I just, that's just not my strength.